Hello everybody, my name is Kara, and today I am here with the 10 Strange Bookish Facts tag. I don't actually know off the top of my head who the original creator of this one was, but I will definitely link their original down below, and I was tagged by the lovely Kazan from Always Doing, and I will also put her channel down below. This is pretty much what it sounds like. I just have some strange bookish facts about me that I'm going to share with you. Number one is I still belong to a library in Ireland. When I was studying abroad there in Cork, I really wanted access to books, and I did buy a few, but I of course couldn't buy a ton because I was going to be flying back across multiple countries. So I ended up joining the library, and I still have the library card in my wallet, I think. So yeah, I think that's kind of cool. Number two is that I am pretty much incapable of using audiobooks. Like, my auditory information processing is just atrocious. I remember even like in 4th and 5th grade when we would be doing read alouds, I would go to our school library and check out the book that we were reading so I could read along and follow along. Because I just couldn't retain information like that. And I have tried multiple times to get into audiobooks. I know that a lot of people really love them. It just doesn't work for me, and that's fine. People have different ways of learning. I've actually tried a couple times pretty recently, and I didn't even mark the books as read on Goodreads, not because I don't consider audiobooks reading, but because if you asked me anything about the story, even right after I had finished it, I would not have been able to tell you. So from my perspective, it doesn't count as reading that book for me. I hope that distinction makes sense. Obviously, read however you want to read. Number three is kind of a weird one. Some books I hate so much that I refuse to even mark them on Goodreads. And this is like way, way, way before my channel. Obviously, if I read a book I hated now, I would mark it and I would talk about it and I would review it and tell you why I didn't like it. But I'm talking like when I was much, much younger. And then obviously I didn't have Goodreads for my entire reading career. So then when I joined, I had to kind of remember books that I had read from obviously before I had Goodreads, and I would go through and mark a bunch of them. And some of them I just didn't remember, and then some of them I hated so much. It's like, I just want to forget this book exists and that I read it. Like, I just want to pretend this book is not a thing. That's how much I hated it. And again, like, some of them I can't even remember now, like which ones they were. And yeah, some books I hate so much that they're not even on my Goodreads. Number four is that I have absolutely horrific luck with spoilers. I get spoiled for things all the time, and pretty much like not through any fault of my own, I don't think. Like, obviously if I'm like reading reviews and I click a spoiler warning and then I get spoiled, that's on me. And I'm not saying, like, I'm not counting that. I mean, like, accidentally coming across spoilers or somebody telling me a spoiler for something. I have horrible luck with that. That happens to me all the time and it enrages me. But the weird exception is I'm really good at avoiding spoilers for classic novels, which I like to go into classics knowing pretty much as little as possible about specifics. I find that I enjoy them more that way, and it's really just extra exciting to read like a 200-plus-year-old book and not know what's going to happen, even though it's famous. I think that's really fun. Number five is one that you probably have been able to pick up on if you've been on my channel for a while, and that is that I really don't pay attention to age ranges for books. A lot of times I won't even mention if a book is YA or middle grade or adult or whatever. And part of that is because I feel like I don't want to add an extra incentive for someone to not pick something up, because I feel like there's still a lot of misconceptions and preconceptions about different age ranges and people classifying them as genres, even though they're not genres. Like, middle grade is not a genre, it's an age range. But that's a whole other rant for another day. So sometimes it's that I don't want to put people off reading something by labeling it a certain thing, because unfortunately I think that's still a tendency that some readers have that is encouraged by publishers. So sometimes I do it for that reason, but sometimes I'm just like genuinely so bad at telling apart like these arbitrary age range designations, to the point where, like, for the BookTube SFF Awards, I got an email that like multiple nominations I did, they're like, oh, actually this one is considered YA and this one is considered something else, so like you're gonna have to change your vote. And I was like, really? Like, that was a YA book? Like, it's really bad. But I don't really mind it, because if I like the sound of a story, I'm gonna read it, and it doesn't matter to me what age the character is. Number six is that I've never been to a book signing. Number seven is that I rarely get book hangovers, and I have never had kind of a reading slump. I don't think, as far as I know. I am kind of afraid of that happening to me, because like once I started getting into BookTube, it's like everybody had experienced like the dreaded reading slump, and so now I have this like really intense fear of having that happen to me. But for the most part, I've had periods where I didn't read as much, and I've had times where I wanted to read but I couldn't decide what to read, and so I just kind of didn't read anything for a couple days, but never really a reading slump. And then book hangovers, where like you read something and you love it so much that you just don't want to read anything else after that. I almost never have that happen to me. I pretty much go from one book right to the next, even if it is like a very emotionally devastating book. Sometimes I'll even like finish it and I'll go to my bookcase and I'll like pick out another book right away. But one of the only exceptions is actually The Last Guardian by Eoin Colfer, which is the last book in the Artemis Fowl series. I think it was the first time I read it. I've only read it twice, but I remember the first time I read that one just being like wrecked. just like emotionally broken from that book, and I did not read anything for a few days after that because I was just like processing my emotions. Number 8, my favorite reading snack is sunflower seeds, but I can't really have them anymore, or I'm not supposed to because I have a lot of jaw problems, and apparently cracking seeds between your teeth is really not good for those, so I still have them sometimes though. I've mentioned this before, like sometimes I have them even when I'm not supposed to, because like, I don't know, there's something about it that just like, I associate them with reading a good book, and I don't know, it's like ever since I was a kid that was like my favorite reading snack. Number 9 is that I recently rediscovered a favorite author through sheer stubbornness and spite, and that is Madeleine L'Engle, who is most known for her Wrinkle in Time series. And to explain this one a little bit, when the movie came out like a year ago or so, a lot of people read the book for the first time, and basically like the reviews were so negative and condescending about how like, oh well, I'm sure if you're a middle grade reader it's fine, but I just prefer a little more depth to my stories now, which like, it's fine. So I got really irritated and I was like, well, I guess like maybe I'll reread it and I'll see what I think now. And I reread the first one and I love it and appreciate it even more than when I was little. And actually reading that book made me kind of research Madeleine L'Engle more and realize that she actually wrote a bunch of other books that I never knew about. Like she wrote some nonfiction that I really want to get to, and I just like, I've rediscovered an author who really means a lot to me. And I had actually like convinced myself when I was little that I didn't like her as much, that I didn't really like the series very much, because for a long time when I was little I had convinced myself that I hated all science fiction because of a couple bad sci-fi experiences I had, but I had sort of like talked myself out of liking her books, and like rediscovering them as an adult, like they mean even more to me and I can see more depth to them. And like, I understand they're not for everyone, but like if you read them and you don't like them, please don't imply it's because you're smarter than us. Thanks. This tag is ending up a lot more bitchy than I meant it to, but that's fine. And finally, number 10 is something that I'm finding is surprisingly common on BookTube, and that is that there was a period of my life where I pretty much exclusively reread books. Like I didn't read anything new. And I actually remember I had written them down, like I had written like my favorites list down, and I would go through, like cycle through my favorites list, and I would just reread them over and over with an occasional like library book that I hadn't read before and things like that. But for the most part, like I was just rereading my favorites over and over and over again. And I'm still a huge fan of rereading now. Obviously now I read a lot more new books than I did then, but yeah, it's funny because I've come across people, like multiple people recently who have said that for a time in their life they also almost exclusively reread books. So I just think that's kind of interesting. Okay everybody, so those are 10 strange bookish facts about me. Some of them more strange than others, some of them more interesting than others, but I hope you kind of had fun with this. I'm going to tag a few people in the description box. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you soon with another video, and I hope you love the next book you read. Bye!